everybody, what's up? Welcome back. It's your favorite ginger bibliophile, Kat. So, I hope you're all doing really well, and if you're new, well, hopefully you like story time and reviews of books that you didn't know you needed to read. Or, cute animals, because, of course, I'm an animal lover. Gotta have some cute, animal videos. Get y'all through the work week, so... And notice Disney! And, well, kind of hard to see, but it's a Mushu ring. Which, there's a reason for this. I don't have any, Aladdin or, villainous Disney shirts, which I really need to rectify that. But the idea for this segment came from what I read a month or so ago, and I reviewed for y'all. It was part of the Villains Ever After series on Kindle Unlimited, and one of the stories gave off very, 1001 Nights Aladdin vibes. So there's a storyteller and a genie and all this good stuff. And I will link that video below for you if you want to see about that. But I realized that I have two copies of this. I have this one that's the Penguin Classic that has some excerpts, and another version that is awesome and colorfully illustrated, but is very, very old and likely to, fall apart if I try to read out of it. So we're gonna read from this one, and ooh, I got nail polish on it. It's a good thing that I own this, because yeah, my nail polish was supposed to set in a minute, and it's been about 30, and apparently it's not set. But we're gonna start off with The Tale of the Hunchback, as it's the first full story in here, and it's only 5 pages, so it shouldn't take long. But look at that print. That is a little on the small side. So I've never read this. I've watched The Hunchback of Notre Dame a couple times, and Esmeralda's awesome, and who doesn't want a cute little goat? They're so adorable, but I've never actually read the story, so we'll see how this one goes, shall we? Once upon a time, in the city of Basra, there lived a prosperous tailor who was fond of sport and merriment. It was his custom to go out with his wife from time to time in quest of pleasure and amusement. It chanced that one evening, when they were returning home from a long jaunt, they met a sprightly little hunchback whose comic aspect banished grief and sorrow and drove away all care. Elated with drink, he was clashing a tambourine and singing gleefully. The tailor and his wife were so amused at the hunchback's drollery that they invited him to spend the evening with them as their guest. The hunchback accepted, and when they had returned to the house, the tailor hurried out to the marketplace, where he bought some fried fish, bread, and lemons, and honey for dessert. The three sat down to a hilarious meal. Being fond of practical jokes, the tailor's wife crammed a large piece of fish into the hunchback's mouth and forced him to swallow it. But, as fate would have it, the fish concealed a big, sharp bone which stuck in his throat and choked him, so that when they examined him, they found, to their horror, that the hunchback was dead. Well, that's a dark twist. The tailor lifted up his hands and exclaimed, "There's no strength or power! Save it! In Allah! Alas, this man should have met his fate at our hands, and in this fashion!" "Your cries are of no avail," said his wife. "We must do something." "What can we do?" whimpered the tailor. "Rise, and take the body in your arms. We will cover it with the shawl and carry it out to the house this very night. I will walk in front, crying, 'My child is ill! My poor child is ill! Who will direct us to a doctor's house?'" Encouraged by her plan, the tailor wrapped up the hunchback in a large silken shawl and carried him out into the street, his wife lamenting, "My child is ill! My child! Who will save him from the foul smallpox?" So all who saw them whispered together, "They are carrying a child stricken with the smallpox." Thus they proceeded through the streets, inquiring for the doctor's house as they went, until at last they were directed by the passers-by to the house of a Jewish doctor. They knocked, and the door was opened by a black slave girl. "Give your master this piece of silver," said the tailor's wife, "and beg him to come down and see my child, for he is very ill." When the girl went in to call the doctor, the tailor's wife slipped into the vestibule and said to her husband, "Leave the hunchback here and let us run for our lives." The tailor propped up the body at the bottom of the staircase, and the pair made off as fast as their legs could carry them. The Jew rejoiced on receiving the piece of silver. He rose in haste and, hurrying down the stairs in the dark, stumbled against the corpse and toppled it over. Terrified at the sight of the lifeless hunchback, and thinking that he himself had just killed him, the Jew called on Moses and Aaron and Ezra and Joshua, son of Nun, and bethought himself of the 10 Commandments and wrung his hands, saying, "How shall I get rid of the body?" Then he took up the hunchback and carried him to his wife and told her what had happened. "Why, then, do you stand there and do nothing?" exclaimed the terrified woman. "If the corpse is still here by daybreak, we are lost. Come, and we will carry the body to the terrace and throw it out into the house of our neighbor, the Muslim." Now the Muslim was the steward of the royal kitchens, from which he seldom departed with his pockets empty. His house was always infested by cats and mice, which ate the butter, the cheese, and the corn, and on fine nights the dogs of the neighborhood came down and feasted on the contents of his kitchen. So the Jew and his wife, carrying the hunchback, climbed down from their terrace into the neighbor's house, and propped him up against the wall of the kitchen. It was not long before the steward, who had been out all day, returned to his house. He opened the door and lighted a candle, then started at the sight of a man leaning against the wall of his kitchen. "So our thief is man after all," he thought, taking up a mallet hood. "By Allah, to think that it is you, and not the cats and the dogs, who stole all the meat and butter. I have killed almost all the cats and dogs in the district, and never thought of you and your like, who come prowling down the terraces." So saying, he knocked the hunchback with the mallet and dealt him another blow upon the chest as he lay on the ground. But the angry steward soon found that the hunchback was dead. He was seized with fear and exclaimed, "There is no strength or power save in Allah. A curse upon the meat and the butter, and upon this night, which has witnessed your death at my hands, you wretch." Then, perceiving his deformity, added, "Is it not enough that you are a hunchback? Must you also be a kitchen thief? Oh, Allah, protect me in your mercy." Well, this is getting a bit unexpected. The steward took up the hunchback and, carrying him on his shoulders, left the house. The night was already approaching its end. He walked with his burden through the deserted streets until he entered a lane leading to the marketplace and came to a shop that stood on a corner. There he leaned the hunchback up against the wall and hurried away. Soon after, a Christian, who was the king's broker, passed through the lane on his way to the public baths. Fuddled with drink, he reeled along, muttering to himself, "Doomsday has come, the last judgment has come," and staggering from one side of the lane to the other. When he came close to the hunchback, he stopped, and without noticing him, turned around to make water. Well, that's a new way of putting it. Now it so chanced that earlier in the evening the Christian had been robbed of his turban and was forced to buy another. Therefore, when he suddenly saw the figure of the hunchback against the wall, the drunken broker, imagining that he was about to snatch off his new turban, took him by the throat and knocked him down with a resounding blow. Then he raised a great outcry, screaming and cursing and calling out to the watchman of the marketplace. The watchman arrived to find a Christian beating a Muslim. "Rise up and let go of him," he shouted. And when he found that the hunchback was dead, exclaimed, "A pretty state of things when a Christian dares to kill a believer." Confounded at the swift dispatch of his victim, the Christian began to call on Jesus and Mary. Thus, as the proverb has it, intoxication departed and meditation came in its place. And the watchman took hold of the Christian broker and manacled him, and dragged him away to the governor's house. In the morning, the governor gave orders for the hanging of the Christian. The town crier proclaimed his crime in the streets, and a gallows was set up in the heart of the city. Then came the executioner in the presence of the governor. He placed the Christian beneath the gallows and threw the rope round his neck. At this moment, the king's steward pushed his way through the crowd, crying, "Do not hang him, it was I who killed the hunchback." "Why did you kill him?" asked the governor. "It all happened," replied the steward, "when I returned home last night and found him in my house, about to break into the kitchen. I struck him with a mallet, and he fell down dead upon the instant. In despair, I carried him to a lane adjoining the marketplace. Is it not enough to have killed a Muslim?" added the steward passionately. Must a Christian also die on my account? Therefore, hang no man but me." When he heard this, the governor set the Christian free and said to the executioner, "Hang this man instead, on the grounds of his own confession." The executioner led the steward to the scaffold and had just placed a rope around his neck when the Jewish doctor forced his way through the crowd, crying, "Do not hang him! I am the man who killed the hunchback." And the Jew related to the governor his own version of the hunchback's death. "Is my sin not great enough that I have killed a man unwittingly?" he added. "Must another be killed through my crime and with my knowledge?" On hearing this, the governor gave orders that the Jew be hanged in place of the steward. But when the rope was placed round his neck, the tailor came forward and cried out, "Do not hang him! None killed the hunchback but myself." And he related to the astonished assembly the circumstances of the hunchback's death. The governor marveled at the story of the hunchback and said, "This episode ought to be recorded in books." And he ordered the executioner to set the Jew at liberty and to hang the tailor. "Would to heaven they would make up their minds," muttered the executioner, who was becoming impatient at the delay. "The day will end before we hang any of them." And he resolutely placed the rope around the tailor's neck. Now the hunchback, who was the cause of all this commotion, was the king's jester and favorite companion. When the king found that the hunchback had been absent from the royal palace all night and the next morning, he ordered some of his attendants to seek him. They soon returned to inform him of the hunchback's death and his self-confessed murderers. "Go to the governor," said the king to his chamberlain, "and bring them all before me." The chamberlain hurried at once to the city square, where the executioner was about to hang the tailor. "Stop! Stop! Do not hang him!" shouted the chamberlain, rushing through the crowd. And before the executioner could complete his work, the chamberlain informed the governor of the king's orders and took him to the royal palace, together with the tailor, the Christian, the Jew, the steward, and the hunchback's body. When they had all been admitted to the king's presence, the governor kissed the ground before him and related to him all that had happened. The king marveled greatly and gave orders that the story be inscribed on parchment in letters of gold. Then the king asked those who were present, "Have you ever heard a story more marvelous than that of the hunchback?" Well, that was not expected. I'm not quite sure how I feel about that one. It started off a little dark and very rude, and especially it's like, oh yay, the Jew wanting money. That's not cliche. But I kind of like the twist at the end of, we're all good. We're not going to let somebody else, die for what we think we did. So, I'm going to call that a good start for, a start. I'm not sure exactly if that was good or not, but hopefully it's got y'all a little intrigued that something will get, a little bit better. I've looked through the table of contents on here, and, it made sense to start at the start, because that way we'll definitely get through all of them, as there's quite a lot, but there's also the fisherman and the genie that I'm, confused and interested about, and Sinbad the sailor and Sinbad the porter, which I didn't know there was a porter, so we will be getting to that one eventually. And it looks like there's a lot of small tales under the tale of the hunchback, so let me know if y'all want more of those. I'm not sure if they're part of it or like a second thing. There is Aladdin in here, but I don't think y'all want me to read what looks like a 70-page story to y'all. But this is just a few of them. So, I hope y'all enjoyed it, and I will see you soon. Bye! Happy reading!